As sports go, parkour is one of the youngest ones. It only started to seriously be developed in the 90s and started to spread in the early 2000s. But since then, parkour has done a lot of growing up. Like everyone, it started out as a little baby, it had its terrible twos, and then it had its rebellious teenage stage. For parkour, the 2000s was its rebellious teenage stage. In today's video, we're going to go through what parkour was like in the 2000s.
Hey up, lads.
Not bad, yourself?
Yeah, I'm alright.
When I say the 2000s, I am going to touch on the very early 2010s because a lot of these funny trends spilled over into the early 2010s as well. The first thing that really comes to mind is the way that people did parkour, like the style of parkour that was popular.
Especially towards the late 2000s. In the early 2000s, people used to train A to B, like Yamakasi style parkour. But towards the late 2000s, people started to get really good at just doing big things. Like big running precisions, big arm jumps, big everything. And it was kind of funny because people stopped focusing on doing big lines, like creative, linking stuff together, and kind of just focused on big running precisions. This was certainly more towards the latter end of the 2000s, and definitely pushed on to the early 2010s.
He's cruising. Yes, let's go.
So ages ago, I spent like half an hour battling this. We're gonna try again. Probably not gonna make it, but we'll see. One more. Oh, just hard to do. But there was just so many athletes, like particularly Kai Willis, who really pushed the bar in single movements, like maxing out massive jumps, and people really started progressing that. Whereas nowadays, a lot of parkour focuses around big lines, big creative, intricately linked together lines, which funnily enough is more reminiscent of the early 2000s. People nowadays, especially with the ascent-descent style parkour, train far more like they did in the early 2000s. The early 2000s was just big height drops and how quickly can you get yourself down off a roof to the ground. Like the height drops were amazing. Like height drops now are kind of like a bit of a meme in the parkour world. Sending a big height drop for the sake of doing a height drop is usually done just for fun. Because ultimately it's really bad for your body if you just take massive impact. I mean, Dom Tomato could probably argue otherwise, but generally that's how people see it. But the 2000s was really interesting when it came to movement. Parkour evolved so much, and it was because parkour became international. It moved from just being in France with an isolated amount of athletes to being a worldwide phenomenon. And with that, all these people from different parts of the world brought their own ideas and techniques to parkour. Before we go on, a massive thank you to the Ridge wallet for sponsoring today's video. The Ridge wallet is totally unlike standard wallets. I'm going to show you my old one for comparison. So this is my old, pretty beaten up wallet, and this is the Ridge wallet next to it. The Ridge wallet is light, it's sleek, and it fits perfectly in your pocket. Unlike this old boy here, which leaves a massive bulge in your pocket. The Ridge wallet holds up to 12 cards, and there's room for cash in the front. There's over 30 different styles and colours to choose from, such as carbon fibre and burnt titanium. The Ridge wallet is so durable that they offer a lifetime warranty, meaning you could just buy this one wallet and have it for the rest of your life. So do yourself a favour, get rid of your crusty old wallet and pick up a Ridge wallet. What's more is you can get 10% off your order with free worldwide delivery and returns by going to ridge.com/Jimmy the Giant and using the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video. So Corey set the bar the other day by doing the tic-tac from the pillar thing to the bit over there. So I want to see if we can kind of do it there. I still haven't done that one, so I don't know why I'm trying this, but it's a maybe. I think the technique to this is, paying attention.
This little corner, you're meant to hit it like that, and it gives you a bit of push.
Maybe, I don't know, I haven't done it yet, so. Alright, so the next thing I remember from the 2000s era that is just totally different to now is the gimmicks. So what I mean by that is in the 2000s, a lot of the well-known athletes had some kind of gimmick. they would have something that would be unique to them. So for starters, there was a very famous freerunner called Tim Sheaf. Tim Sheaf got so famous, he started appearing on TV shows and in his own regard became a bit of a celebrity in the mainstream world. Tim's gimmick was handstands. He would always do handstands. It was like his thing. And if you, as a freerunner, started doing handstands, everyone would compare you to Tim Sheaf. But as gimmicks go, handstands weren't that bad. There's a very famous French athlete who is still very good and well known today, called Johan. And he was known for having a tail. You didn't hear me wrong, he literally had a tail hanging out the back of his joggers. So every time you'd see him, you would see a tail flapping behind him. And along with that, he had all these slits in his beard and his hair, and he just had this crazy look. And like, yeah, of course, it looked ridiculous. But everyone remembered him for it. Like, low-key, he was a bit of a marketing genius.
It was a bit full foot, so we're gonna do it better.
Another one that comes to mind is Blue, aka Blue Daredevil. Blue is a very iconic OG in the parkour world. His gimmick was he dressed in all blue, like all the time. He would always wear blue. That was just his thing. And I remember for me and my mates, we all kind of wanted our own gimmick. We wanted our thing that we were known for. And my mate Greg had his own gimmick. Greg would wear full luminous clothing. Like, I'm talking like full high-vis head to toe. He even had shoelaces that were bright luminous yellow. And it was ridiculous. I'm sorry to bring this up, Greg, but it was ridiculous. And I remember, poor old Greg, there was a clip of him once where he did a flip on a wall by a pond in full luminous clothing and fell in the pond.
But shout out to this absolute legend who said, it's okay, it's all just part of training.
It's part of training. It's good.
Poor old Greg, go show him some love, go follow him on Instagram. So gimmicks kind of lead me into nicknames. So as I mentioned, Blue would obviously always wear blue, but you might be wondering, why was he called Blue? Why Blue Daredevil? And it wasn't just Blue, like loads of freerunners would have nicknames. They would have their parkour name. Tim Sheaf was known as Tim Livewire Sheaf. Paul Corky or Corky, I always say it wrong, who was the owner of Urban Free Flow, which I made that whole documentary on. His name was Easy Styler. And Greg was very creatively Greg Luminous Ball. These nicknames came from parkour forums. Most of the time, if someone had a nickname, it's because that was their screen name on these old school parkour forums. I've spoken about these legendary forums in the past. There was parkour.net, Urban Free Flow Forum, and there was just so many. Most local communities would have their own forum. Facebook didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist, so the only way that freerunners could organize and meet up with each other was via parkour forums. These parkour forums were these janky, awfully built websites. Every time you would log on to one of these, you were scared that you were gonna get some virus that would set fire to your parents' computer. But nonetheless, for some reason, people just trusted these forums. People would sit and debate hot button issues in the parkour world via these forums. There was the infamous parkour versus freerunning debate that would never end, and debates about Yamakasi philosophy. This kind of debating about pretty irrelevant issues in the parkour world has never really gone. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that some people got very heated by the fact that I said Orlando created monkey style. I guess some things just never die.
Next spot. Next spot.
Yeah.
So from the parkour forums, there was one thing that springs to mind that doesn't really exist as much these days, and that is massive parkour jams. Now, before people shout at me, obviously there are still jams that happen, but in the old days, in the 2000s, parkour jams were insanely big, and you would have famous jams. You'd have recurring jams that would happen every single year. These jams would become so popular that people would travel from different parts of the world just to come to the jam. Like, it wasn't rare to see a jam in London that would have maybe 100+ freerunners. Like, that wasn't out of the ordinary. Because parkour at this time was still in its like fad phase. Parkour was massive. Pretty much every single kid was doing parkour in the 2000s. And it was just so insane when you'd have these amazing jams of like 100 freerunners. I realised you might not actually see what happened there. Basically, because I was scared, I put like 20 times too much power, just overshot it and landed on my shoulder. To be honest, these jams did really just become fanboy sessions where people would go there pretty much to go and see the famous freerunners. But I just feel like in the 2000s, there was more a feeling of like adventure to go and train. Like the idea of traveling from Manchester to London for one-day training wasn't out of the ordinary. And I feel like there's just a slight attitude shift that happened after the 2000s. Like if you were going to a big parkour jam, despite how far it might be from your house, you'd pretty much aim to get there for the latest of 10 AM. Like I remember somehow waking up and getting to London for 9 o'clock. And I'm someone who likes to sleep in, but we would put this effort in to go and train for a whole day. Literally how high the wall is, under knee height. And in general, parkour sessions were just longer and we would train a lot harder. Like 10 AM till 10 PM was pretty standard on a Saturday session, and athletes would absolutely destroy their bodies. Not in a reckless way, but just in like a working out way. The sessions were long and grueling, and they often ended with some kind of conditioning session that went on until it was dark. This isn't the sort of thing that I'm looking back on and saying we're just undisciplined these days, because to be honest, it probably wasn't that healthy training that long and training that hard. But there was just a slight attitude difference. I mean, like today, I rocked up at 1 PM and I'll probably train until 4 or 5 o'clock. Maybe I just got lazy. One more, can I try one more go? One go. Oh, I should have just went for it. I'm sat down because we need to talk about this. Parkour fashion in the 2000s. Where do I even start? Parkour fashion in the 2000s was a joke. I just don't know what we were thinking. We used to wear these triple XL joggers. Like, no word of a lie, the bigger your joggers were, for some reason you'd give off the impression you're a good athlete. We would literally wear what looked like bin liners around our legs. Like, if there was a strong gust of wind, I'm pretty sure you would just get taken off into the breeze. And the reason I'm saying this so aggressively is because I was 100% one of these people. I used to dress like an absolute idiot. Like, I don't know how my parents let me leave the house wearing the stuff we did. I think what started the baggy joggers thing was the kind of look it gave, like when you were moving. The bigger your joggers were, the more flowy you kind of looked. Like if you look at Foskey and some of the Gup guys, they were known for just looking so flowy. I mean, yeah, of course it was their movement, but even still, the joggers did kind of make it look flowier. Although the joggers looked ridiculous, and I'm not gonna for a second try and defend it, they did mark freerunners. Like they did make freerunners look like freerunners. The way parkour fashion has evolved these days, there's been quite a lot of influence from just general fashion and skate culture. But back then, if you saw a freerunner, you would know it was a freerunner. That, or you might have thought it was a homeless person. Could have went either way. And yet, despite how ridiculous it looked, I think there was something that freerunners had right about it. For a lifestyle sport culture like parkour to really stand out and thrive, it needs its own look. You need to be able to just look at a freerunner and know they're a freerunner. And I do think sometimes the parkour world does kind of copy skate culture quite a bit, and I'm not sure if I'm really with that. Like, yeah, it does look cool, but there are times where freerunners just kind of look like knockoff skateboarders. But I do think freerunners are starting to find their own fashion now. Stuff like the cargo joggers, tucking your trousers into your socks, and things like that. Freerunners are starting to become more recognizable. There are loads of good brands out there, but to me, Stora are a really perfect example of a brand that are trying to make a look for freerunners. I know I'm gonna get a load of hate from people that still wear the XL joggers. I'm sorry, I just don't like your trousers. I'm sorry. Okay, so we were training here the other night, me and Corey, and we were getting a few cool little things, so I'm going to try the 180 precision here. But before we do that, I want to tell you about another thing from the 2000s. In the 2000s, I remember there was a different attitude towards business in parkour. The idea of money in parkour was very taboo. Competition, clothing brands, anything like that often got a lot of old school freerunners a little bit riled up. I believe there was this general feeling that if you started introducing money and competitions into parkour, you start to take away some of the purity of the sport. And whilst personally I don't agree with that, I believe that money industry is great because it makes the sport get out there to more people. But a lot of people in the 2000s just didn't see it like that. As I mentioned earlier, there was a very big clothing brand in parkour called Urban Free Flow. Now, Urban Free Flow were massive. I'm pretty sure Easy Styler made a lot of money. A lot of kids would wear the Urban Free Flow clothing, but it didn't come without its backlash. There were a lot of people that hated Urban Free Flow. Rightly or wrongly, they just didn't like what they stood for. And not to say there's no merit towards any of the arguments against urban free flow and things like that, because although personally I'm very for business, if those businesses are run by exploitative people, it's not good for anyone. But you know, as that kind of argument got lesser and lesser over the years, more and more brands have come along, and now parkour clothing and fashion is very integral to parkour. But I'm pretty sure there are some very old school freerunners that probably don't really like all this modern parkour. We're gonna go do something else because I'm gonna get wound up if I keep trying that one, so. That was pretty shameful after making a whole video about how you need to learn to climb up. I'll put in the clip where I did it properly the other day, so.
Yes!
In summary, parkour has changed a lot since the 2000s. It's come a long way. It's had its ups, but it's also had its downs. And it's totally natural that some people in the sport are going to be afraid of where parkour goes in the future. They're afraid that the ideas and the values that got them into the sport might get overlooked and fade away as the sport evolves.
Where's the grade?
And like, it's a totally reasonable fear. Every major sport, even football, has gone through this. There was a TV show on Netflix called The English Game, or something like that, which talked about how football started to evolve from being this sport that was only played by very upper class gentlemen. But if you think about it, hundreds of years on, how many lives football has touched and how much it's changed the world. Not only the opportunities, but the memories and what it means to people. As parkour gets bigger, it's going to continue to change. But in my opinion, that should inspire people. It should inspire them to push the ideas that made parkour mean so much to them. I did a whole podcast with my friend Robin, the coach. I'll link that below. And in that podcast, we talked about how parkour is evolving. And I've said this many times in my videos, but for me, I want parkour to be mainstream. Parkour has given me some of the best things in my life, and I want more people to experience that. And just because the sport might change and it might evolve, that doesn't have to affect how I experience parkour and what parkour means to me. And for us to be so precious and clutch onto it like it's our thing, in my opinion, is kind of selfish.
Fully love these things, man, they're perfect. Comment below your memories from parkour in the 2000s. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The parkour bucket list is out now. You can massively help me by picking one of them up, donating to me on Patreon, or using the sponsor link below. I'm gonna get off this before I die. Thanks for watching, peace.